My wife called me a practice husband who paid every bill until she found someone better, so I ended our marriage with a move she never imagined. I am 32, male, and I have been married to Haley, 29, female, for 3 years now. Up until last month, I thought things were pretty solid between us. Sure, we had our issues like every couple, but nothing major. At least that is what I thought. Here is some quick background. Haley used to work in marketing at a mid-size company downtown. She made decent money and had her own thing going. But about 1 year after we got married, she started talking about how stressful her job was and how she wanted to focus on other opportunities. I make pretty good money, so I told her if she wanted to quit and figure out what she really wanted to do, she should go for it. It seemed like the supportive husband thing to do, right? Wrong. But I am getting ahead of myself. Last Friday night, Haley decided she wanted to have her girlfriends over for dinner. This is not unusual. She does this maybe once a month. Usually, it is Bella, Jessica, and sometimes this other girl whose name I can never remember. They get together, eat way too much food, and talk about whatever it is women talk about when guys are not around. I actually do not mind these dinners. Haley seems happy when her friends come over, and I like cooking anyway. Plus, it gives me an excuse to make my famous pasta sauce. By famous, I mean I dump a jar of rouse into a pan and add extra garlic and some red pepper flakes. It tastes good, and everyone always compliments it, so whatever. The girls showed up around 6:30. I spent about an hour in the kitchen getting everything ready. The whole time I could hear them in the dining room getting louder and more animated. When I brought everything out, they were deep in conversation about some drama with one of Bella's other friends. Something about this girl dating her friend's ex or whatever. I was not really paying attention because honestly, that kind of high school drama does not interest me. I set everything down, asked if they needed anything else, and went back to the kitchen to clean up and give them space. Haley always says her friends appreciate that I am not hovering around trying to be part of their conversations. So, I am in the kitchen loading the dishwasher and wiping down counters when I realize they have moved on to talking about relationships. Nothing unusual there either. That is like 80% of what they discuss, but then I hear my name mentioned, and I kind of tune in without really meaning to. That is when I heard it clear as day. Haley said, "Honestly, girls, Anani is just my practice husband until I find someone better." I literally stopped moving. I completely froze with a dirty plate in my hand. For a second, I thought maybe I misheard or took something out of context. But then her friend asked, "What do you mean a practice husband?" Then Haley started explaining to her friends that I am good for now because I pay all her bills and do the cooking, but she is not going to stay with me forever. She said, "I am fine for practice, but not husband material long term. The problem is she cannot really leave me yet because I pay for literally everything." All three of them started cracking up like it was the funniest thing ever. Meanwhile, I am standing there in my own kitchen holding dirty dishes, wondering if I actually heard what I think I heard. The worst part was not even what she said. It was how casually she said it. Like, it was just an obvious, accepted fact that everyone already knew. She was not confessing some secret or asking for advice. She was just stating the situation like she might comment on the weather. I set the plate down carefully and just stood there for probably 2 full minutes, trying to process what I just heard. My wife of 3 years, the woman I have been supporting financially for the past 2 years, the person I cook dinner for every night, and whose friends I have been entertaining in my own house, just told those friends that I am practice, like I am some kind of training while she is using until she is ready for the real thing. I thought about walking in there and confronting her right then. I thought about asking her to explain exactly what the hell she meant by practice husband, but something stopped me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the realization that if I made a scene, her friends would never tell me what they really thought about anything ever again. But honestly, I was not really thinking. I was just standing there feeling like an idiot. How long had she been thinking this way? How long had her friends known? Was I the only person who thought our marriage was real? After they left, I waited about an hour. I figured I would give her time to clean up and get settled before I brought it up. I did not want to seem like I had been sitting upstairs plotting or anything, though. Honestly, that is exactly what I was doing. When I finally went downstairs, she was loading the last few glasses into the dishwasher. She looked relaxed and happy, like she always does after hanging with her friends. I asked her straight up what that comment about me being practice was all about. She acted like she did not know what I was talking about at first, giving me this blank look like I was speaking a foreign language. So, I spelled it out for her. I told her I heard what she said about me being her practice husband and how she cannot leave because I pay for everything. That is when her whole demeanor changed. The confused act dropped, and she got this look on her face like I was being ridiculous for bringing it up. "Oh, that. Yeah, I said that. Do you have a problem?" Just like that. No, sorry. No explanation. Just asking if I have a problem, like I am being unreasonable for not wanting to be called practice. I looked at her for maybe 10 seconds. Really looked at her. She was standing there looking annoyed that I had the nerve to question her calling me practice. I told her, no problem at all. And that is when I started planning. That weekend was probably the longest 48 hours of my life. Haley was acting completely normal, like nothing had happened. Making breakfast Saturday morning, asking if I wanted to go furniture shopping, talking about maybe planning a vacation this summer. Meanwhile, I am sitting there drinking coffee and thinking about how she basically admitted to using me as a financial safety net. We went to her parents' house for dinner like we do most Sundays. We sat around their dining room table while her mom asked about work, and her dad told the same stories he tells every week. Haley was playing the perfect daughter and loving wife the whole time. Holding my hand under the table, laughing at my jokes, acting like we are this amazing couple. The whole time I am thinking about what her parents would say if they knew their daughter was planning to trade up from me when someone better came along. Would they still be so friendly? Would her mom still ask me about my work projects and tell me how proud she is of what I have accomplished? Monday morning, I called out sick. I told my foreman I was coming down with something and needed a day to rest. It was the first time I had used a sick day in probably 2 years, but I had more important things to deal with. I drove straight to my lawyer's office downtown. Yes, I have a lawyer. When you own property and have decent assets, you get one. I learned that lesson from my dad, who got cleaned out in his divorce back when I was in college. I explained the situation without going into too much detail. I told him my wife had made some comments that suggested she was planning to leave me eventually, and I wanted to know where I stood legally. He pulled out my file and started going through the paperwork from when Haley and I got married. It turns out the prenup I insisted on was the smartest thing I ever did. Haley was not happy about it at the time. Kept saying it showed I did not trust her and how romantic couples do not need legal protection from each other. But I had watched my dad lose half his retirement and the house he had worked 20 years to pay off. I was not making that mistake. The prenup was pretty straightforward. Anything I own before the marriage stays mine. Anything I earn during the marriage stays mine unless she can prove she contributed to it financially since she quit her job and has not worked in 2 years. That would be pretty hard to do. The house is mine. The savings accounts are mine. Even the car she drives is registered in my name only. My lawyer explained that technically, since my name is primary on all our accounts, I could move money around as long as I was not doing anything that would look vindictive in court. The key was to be smart about it, not emotional. We spent about an hour going through everything, including bank accounts, credit cards, insurance policies, even stupid stuff like streaming service subscriptions. It is amazing how much financial stuff gets tangled up when you are married. Most people do not realize how complicated it is to separate two lives that have been combined for years. The crazy part was realizing how much control I actually had. Every credit card was in my name with her as an authorized user. Every utility bill, every subscription, every automatic payment, all tied to accounts that I controlled. She had been living off my money for so long that she did not have any independent financial foundation anymore. That afternoon, I started making changes. Nothing dramatic that would tip her off. Just small adjustments that would give me more control when the time came. I moved money from our joint checking account to my personal savings. Not all of it, just enough to matter. I changed passwords on a few accounts and updated contact information so notifications would come to my email instead of hers. The rest of the week, I kept acting normal while quietly preparing. Haley did not notice anything different because she never paid attention to our finances anyway. She just used her cards and assumed money would always be there. She never asked about balances or budgets or where the money was actually coming from. The next day, I had my lawyer draw up divorce papers. It took about an hour to go through all the details and make sure everything was worded correctly. On Thursday, I signed everything. It felt weird putting my signature on papers that would end my marriage, but it also felt like I was finally taking control of my life instead of just letting things happen to me. 2 days later, I put the final pieces in place. I made sure all the important accounts were secured, and all the legal paperwork was ready to go. Everything had to be timed perfectly for maximum impact while staying completely within legal bounds. See, Haley has this routine every Saturday. She meets Bella and the rest of her friends for brunch at this expensive place downtown. It has become like a weekly tradition for them. They sit around for hours eating overpriced eggs and taking pictures of their food, then usually go shopping afterward. This Saturday was going to be different. Saturday morning started like every other Saturday for the past year. She came downstairs around 10:30, looking like she was ready for a magazine photo shoot. She grabbed her keys off the counter and gave me a quick kiss goodbye. I told her to have fun and watched her drive away in the car that I pay for, wearing clothes that I bought, carrying credit cards that I am responsible for the last time. As soon as her card disappeared around the corner, I made the call to cancel her remaining credit cards. It took about 15 minutes to go through all the account verification stuff and get everything shut down. Next, I called the bank and had them freeze the joint checking account. I told them I suspected unauthorized access and needed to protect the funds while we investigated. Again, technically true. Her access was definitely unauthorized, as far as I was concerned. The whole process took maybe 30 minutes. 30 minutes to cut off the financial pipeline that had been supporting her lifestyle for the past 2 years. I spent the rest of the morning setting up boxes in the living room and organizing all the divorce paperwork. I made a neat little pile of everything she would need to know about finding her own place, getting her own insurance, figuring out her own finances. You know, all the adult stuff she had been avoiding while I handled everything. Around 1:30, my phone started buzzing. The first text from Haley asked me to call the bank because her card got declined. I ignored it. At 1:45, another text said her card was not working and she was embarrassed in front of the girls. I still ignored it. By 2:15, she was sending messages in all caps demanding that I answer my phone. The desperation was already starting to show, and she had only been dealing with this for maybe an hour. Then she started calling. I let it go straight to voicemail. She called 6 more times in the next 20 minutes. Each voicemail got progressively more frantic and angry. The funniest part was when I got a text from Bella saying my wife was losing it at brunch because her cards were not working. She actually used the laughing emoji. The same girl who had been cracking up about me being practiced was now watching Haley's world fall apart in real time. I texted back asking if everything was okay, playing it like I had no idea what was happening. Bella said Haley was claiming there was some problem with the bank and she could not pay for anything. Really? Banking problems? How weird. Then Haley's phone call stopped. I figured she had either borrowed money from one of her friends or decided to come home and confront me directly. Based on how well I know her, I was betting on option 2. I was right. Half an hour later, I heard her car pull into the driveway way earlier than expected. I could hear her car door slam from inside the house. Not the normal gentle close she usually did. This was the angry slam of someone who just had a very bad afternoon. The front door opened about 10 seconds later, and she came storming in, looking like she was ready to burn the house down. She was yelling before she even saw me, going off about how her cards got declined in front of everyone, how Bella had to pay for her lunch, how embarrassing the whole thing was, how she had to make excuses to her friends about why she could not go shopping, how the bank must have made some kind of mistake, and why did not I answer my phone when she needed help. I was sitting on the couch with the divorce papers in my lap and boxes stacked up next to me. Just sitting there calm as could be while she went off about her terrible afternoon. When she finally stopped yelling long enough to take a breath, I told her, real calm, yeah, I canceled the cards because you do not need them anymore. That is when she really lost it. She started demanding to know why I would do that. What was wrong with me? How could I embarrass her like that in front of her friends? Like somehow I was the bad guy for not wanting to fund her lifestyle anymore. But then she noticed the papers and boxes. Her whole attitude shifted from angry to confused real quick. She asked what all this stuff was, and I handed her the divorce papers, explaining that this was her graduation from practice marriage. The look on her face when she realized what was happening was probably worth every penny I'd spent on her over the past 3 years. Pure shock followed by panic, followed by this desperate attempt to backtrack and pretend like none of this was her fault. She tried every approach she could think of. First, she claimed it was all a joke and I was overreacting. Then she got apologetic and promised she did not mean anything by what she said. Then she got angry again and tried to make it my fault for not understanding her sense of humor. But the damage was done. I had heard exactly what she thought about our marriage and about me. She had showed me exactly how much respect she had for the life I had been providing her. And now she was finding out what life looks like when that support gets pulled away. The whole time she is going through her emotional roller coaster, I am just sitting there watching her realize that her comfortable little setup was falling apart. The man she had been calling practice had just practiced his way right out of her life. And the best part, her friends got to watch the whole thing start. Got to see her cards get declined and watch her scramble to make excuses. The same friends who had been laughing about her having a practice husband were now witnessing what happens when practice time ends. I gave her the same deadline I would give any tenant who was not paying rent, 2 hours to pack up and get out. After that, her stuff would be on the curb, and she would be dealing with this situation from somewhere else. That is when she tried to pull the legal card, insisting she could not just be kicked out because it was her house, too. She lived here. She had rights. I could not just throw her out on the street. I pulled out my phone and showed her the prenup she had signed 3 years ago. I told her to read Section 4, Paragraph 2, The part that clearly stated the house remained my separate property, regardless of how long we were married. Watching her read that prenup was probably the most satisfying moment of this whole thing. You could literally see her face change as she realized how screwed she was. She had signed away any claim to the house, the cars, the savings accounts, pretty much everything, and she had done it willingly because she thought she was just humoring my paranoia about protecting assets. She tried to argue that she did not understand what she was signing back then, that I had pressured her into it or misled her about what it meant, but we both knew that was not true. My lawyer had explained everything in detail. She had had her own lawyer review it, and she had signed it because she was so confident in her ability to keep me wrapped around her finger. When the legal reality hit her, she started crying. Real tears, not the fake ones she used when she wanted something. She said she did not have anywhere to go, that all her friends lived with roommates or in tiny apartments. How was she supposed to find a place with no job and no savings? I told her she should have thought about that before calling me practice. The clock was ticking. What happened next was actually pretty impressive from a logistic standpoint. Once she realized I was not backing down, she went into full crisis mode. She started calling friends to see who could help her move or let her crash for a few days. She went upstairs and started throwing clothes into suitcases like her life depended on it. The funny part was listening to her phone calls. She could not exactly tell people the real reason she was getting divorced, so she had to make up some story about us having irreconcilable differences. A few of her friends offered to help, but you could tell they were confused about why this was happening so suddenly. Then she came downstairs with 2 suitcases and a bunch of random boxes, looking around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. This place she had been living in for 3 years, treating like her personal hotel, was never going to be hers. She tried one last desperate attempt to change my mind. She stood there in the living room with all her stuff packed, telling me how this was crazy and we were throwing away 3 years of marriage over something stupid. She said, how people make mistakes, but they work through them together. I told her it was not stupid, it was honest. She had finally told the truth about how she saw me in our marriage. I was just acting on that information. The thing that really got to her was how calm I was through the whole thing. She kept expecting me to get angry or emotional or give her an opening to turn this into a big fight where she could play the victim. But I just stayed matter of fact about everything. This was business now, not personal. Then her ride showed up. Bella driving some fancy sports utility vehicle. She looked uncomfortable as hell, probably wondering what she had gotten herself into by agreeing to help. The same girl who had been laughing about the practice husband comment a week ago was now witnessing the aftermath. Right before she got in the car, Haley tried one more time, asking me to please reconsider, to give her another chance to prove that she really did love me and wanted to make this work. I told her to take care of herself and close the door. I watched through the window as they loaded the last of her stuff and drove away. Bella's car disappearing around the same corner where this whole thing had started a week ago. For the first time in years, everything felt exactly like it should be. That night was probably the quietest my house had been in 3 years. No television shows I did not want to watch. No constant chatter about her friends' drama. No planning expensive dinners at restaurants where the food costs more than some people make in a day. Just me, my pizza, and the sound of absolutely nothing. I woke up Sunday morning feeling like I had been carrying around a weight I did not even realize was there. And now it was gone. Around noon, my phone started ringing. It was Haley's mom. I should have seen this coming, but honestly, I had been so focused on the logistics of everything that I had not really thought about dealing with her family. I answered because I figured I might as well get this conversation over with. Her mom launched right into it without even saying hello, demanding to know what was wrong with me and why Haley was at their house crying her eyes out, claiming I had kicked her out for no reason. The whole conversation was exactly what you would expect from someone who had only heard one side of the story. According to Haley's version, I had apparently lost my mind over some innocent comment she made to her friends and decided to end our marriage out of nowhere. She had conveniently left out the part about calling me practice and saying she could not leave because I pay for everything. I asked her mom if Haley had mentioned what she actually said about me being practice. Her mom brushed it off, saying I was being dramatic about some comment she made to her friends. Just girl talk, nothing serious. So, I spelled it out for her. I explained that it was not just some comment. Her daughter had told her friends that I am her practice husband and she cannot leave because I pay for everything. She said this in my own house while I was making dinner for all of them. Her mom went quiet for maybe 10 seconds, then came back with this argument about how that is just girl talk and I cannot destroy a marriage over girl talk. Like somehow the fact that women say these things to each other makes it okay. I told her, watch me. That set her off. She started going on about how I was being cruel and vindictive. How Haley made a mistake, but she loves me and we should be able to work through this. How marriages take effort and communication, and I was just giving up at the first sign of trouble. The thing that really annoyed me was how she kept talking about Haley making a mistake. Like accidentally calling your husband practice in front of your friends is the same as forgetting to pick up milk at the store. This was not a mistake. It was her honest opinion about our marriage that she had never intended for me to hear. I explained that Haley loves my bank account, not me. There is a pretty big difference between the two. Her mom did not like that answer. She started threatening that if I did not take Haley back, they were going to make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was, how I had abandoned their daughter when she needed support, how I had thrown away a good marriage over my own pride. That is when I had heard enough. I told her good luck with that strategy and hung up. Then I blocked her number because I did not need to hear any more lectures about what a terrible person I was for not wanting to be called practice. About an hour later, Haley's dad started calling. It was the same basic conversation, but with more yelling and less emotional manipulation. He was taking the aggressive approach, telling me I was a coward for kicking out his daughter instead of working through our problems like a man. I explained the situation to him, too, but he was not interested in details. He just kept repeating that real men do not give up on their marriages, and I was being weak and selfish. Apparently, real men are supposed to be okay with being called practice as long as they are married. I blocked his number too. Then Haley's sister started texting long messages about how disappointed she was in me and how I was breaking up the family over something petty. How Haley was devastated, and I was destroying her life because my ego could not handle one stupid comment. I blocked her, too. By Sunday evening, I had basically cut off contact with Haley's entire family. Not because I could not handle their criticism, but because none of them seemed to think there was anything wrong with what she had said. They were all more upset about me leaving than they were about her treating our marriage like a temporary arrangement. Monday morning, my own parents called. My mom started off asking if I was doing okay because they had heard about me and Haley separating. Word travels fast in families, especially when someone is telling their version of events to anyone who will listen. I explained the whole situation from the beginning. My dad's response was exactly what I needed to hear. He said, "Good for you." He admitted they had never really liked how Haley treated me anyway, saying she always seemed like she thought she was better than everyone and acted like she was doing me a favor by being married to me. My mom agreed, saying they had bitten their tongues for 3 years because I seemed happy. But they could tell that girl was using me. They said they had seen it from day one, but did not want to interfere in my marriage. Finally, some support from people who actually cared about me instead of just taking Haley's side automatically. My dad asked if I needed anything or wanted them to come stay with me for a few days while I got used to being on my own again. I told them, thanks, but I was actually doing fine. Better than fine, honestly. For the first time in years, I felt like I could just exist without having to worry about someone else's mood or agenda or expensive habits. The conversation with my parents made me realize something important. The people who really knew me and cared about me were not surprised by any of this. They had been watching Haley take advantage of me for years, but respected my choices enough not to say anything unless I asked. Meanwhile, Haley's family was acting like I was the villain for not wanting to be treated like a temporary placeholder. Like, I should be grateful for the privilege of funding someone's lifestyle while they openly planned to trade up when something better came along. The difference in reactions told me everything I needed to know about whether I had made the right decision. My family was relieved that I had finally stood up for myself. Her family was mad that their meal ticket had dried up. The next day, I changed my relationship status on social media and updated my emergency contacts at work. Small things, but they felt significant, like I was officially reclaiming my life instead of just sharing it with someone who did not really want to be there. By the end of the week, the dust had mostly settled. Haley's family had stopped trying to contact me, probably because they realized I was not going to change my mind. My own family was checking in regularly but giving me space to process everything on my own timeline. The house felt completely different. Not empty, just peaceful. Like I could finally relax without worrying about someone judging my choices or planning their exit strategy behind my back. I was starting to remember what it felt like to just be myself instead of trying to be whatever version of myself someone else wanted me to be. Then I got a text from Bella. "Hey Anthony, hope you are doing okay. Can we talk? I am really confused about what happened with you and Haley. Give me all the tea." The audacity was unreal. This was the same girl who had been laughing when Haley called me practice at that dinner. She had been there for the conversation that started all this. She knew exactly what happened. I deleted the message and blocked her number. 3 weeks went by without a single word from Haley. No texts, no calls, no random drive-bys or attempts to get my attention through mutual friends. For a while, I thought maybe she had actually accepted that it was over and moved on with her life. I really should have known better. I was home Saturday afternoon, working on refinishing this old coffee table I had bought at an estate sale when my doorbell rang. I figured it was probably a package delivery or maybe one of my neighbors asking to borrow something. I looked through the window, and there was Haley standing on my porch. But she was not alone. She had some guy with her. Tall, decent looking, wearing one of those expensive button-down shirts that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a month. Designer jeans, fancy watch, the whole corporate pretty boy package. They were holding hands like they wanted to make sure I noticed. I opened the door, and Haley immediately launched into this introduction, wanting me to meet Chandler, her new boyfriend. She said they had been dating, and she thought it was important that I meet him since we were still finalizing the divorce. The guy looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. You could tell he was uncomfortable and probably had no idea why his new girlfriend was dragging him to her ex-husband's house. But Haley was putting on this whole performance, acting like she was so happy and moved on, and everything was perfect in her new life. I looked at both of them for a second and asked if they had only come here to tell me that. It was a simple question, but it cut right through whatever game she was trying to play. Chandler immediately looked at Haley like he was confused about what was actually happening. She started getting flustered, saying she wanted me to see that she was doing fine without me and had found someone who really appreciated her. I told them that was cool and asked if they needed anything else or if I could get back to my Saturday. Just completely matter of fact about the whole thing. That is when Chandler spoke up. He asked Haley what this was really about because she had told him they were just stopping by to pick up something she had forgotten. It turns out she had lied to get him to come with her. Probably told him some story about needing moral support or protection or whatever. You could see the exact moment he realized what was actually happening. His whole demeanor changed from uncomfortable to pissed off. He started asking if she had brought him here to make her ex-husband jealous and whether she was serious right now. Haley tried to backtrack, but the damage was done. This guy had figured out that he was being used as a prop in whatever drama she was trying to create. He dropped her hand, took a step back, and told her he was not doing this. He said she could find her own way home, and walked back to his car. Just left her standing there on my doorstep looking stupid while he drove away. The whole thing took maybe 3 minutes from start to finish. Her big plan to make me jealous had backfired completely, and now she was stranded at my house with no ride and no backup plan. "Are you happy now?" she said, like somehow this was my fault that her scheme had blown up in her face, like I had forced her to lie to some guy and drag him over here for this pathetic display. I did not say anything, just stood there waiting to see what she would do next. That is when she did the most desperate thing I have ever seen. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "Okay, fine. I am single now. Let us just get back together. We can start over and pretend none of this ever happened." I actually laughed out loud. I could not help it. Here is this woman who had called me practice, put me through 3 years of being treated like a placeholder, brought another guy to my house to try and make me jealous, and now she wanted to get back together because her rebound had ditched her on my doorstep. The audacity was incredible. She really thought I had been sitting around waiting for her to come back, that I had just been killing time until she was ready to give our marriage another shot. Like I should be grateful that she was willing to settle for her practice husband again now that her upgrade plan had failed. I was still laughing when I closed the door in her face. She started yelling through the door about how I was making a mistake, how we belonged together and all this desperate stuff. She kept pounding on the door and ringing the doorbell like a crazy person. I put on my headphones and went back to working on the coffee table. Eventually, she gave up and left. I watched through the window as she called someone for a ride, probably having to explain to whoever picked her up why she was stranded at her ex-husband's house with no way to get home. The whole thing was so pathetic, it was almost sad. That was 2 months ago now. I have not heard from her since, though I did hear through a mutual friend that she is living back with her parents and working at some retail job. Apparently, the whole influencer lifestyle does not work as well when you do not have someone else paying for it. Meanwhile, I got promoted again last month, and I am thinking about getting a dog. Maybe I will take some cooking classes, learn to make something more impressive than jar sauce pasta, or travel somewhere I actually want to go instead of just wherever looks good on social media. It is funny how everything worked out. She said I was practicing until she found someone better. It turns out I was practicing, too. Practicing for being the kind of man who does not put up with being treated like a backup plan. She practiced being terrible at marriage, and I practiced ignoring red flags. Now we are both practicing being single, except I am way better at it than she is. I guess practice really does make